Okay guys, so in this video so far you can see all we've done. You can see the APIs, the route, and everything we've done here. So right now we're going to go deeper and we're going to talk about token verification. So let's say for instance this upload post route. Now we have to be sure that the user have certain permissions to actually upload the post. So the permissions will be like is authenticated or is an admin. So you need to have certain permissions before this post route is being triggered. So we're going to create a more like a token. You're going to use that token to verify. I'm going to show you how to authenticate and verify a user, give the user permissions to do certain things using the tokens. So that's what you're going to learn, as you know, in this video. So this is all the code we wrote. You can see this upload post route. We're going to give certain permissions to the user to enable him able to upload a post. So we're going to create a new file now. I'm going to call this file here verify tokens.js. So this file is going to have all the logic. We're going to write all our logic here that are going to help us verify our tokens and authenticate and authorize the user to do certain things on the platform. So we have to be sure user has permissions to upload. We also need to check if the user is an admin, because you have to be an admin to either upload a post. You have to be an admin. So you have to be authenticated, and you also need to be an admin. So I'm going to show how to check do all those checks here. So that the user is authenticated. We're going to check that before the route is triggered. You need to also be an admin. You need to also be an admin to upload posts. Okay, so inside this verified token.js, we're going to write a logic. Let me just comment out something here for you so you understand what we're doing. Right. So this class will help to check certain permissions of the user. Alright, so that's the function of this JavaScript class here. The verified token just helps us to check certain permissions of the user. So in that way, you can check if the user is logged in, or if the user is logged in, or if the user is an admin. So coming here, we're just gonna start the terminal, and a new terminal here is going to be, we'll just say npm start. Let's start the terminal so that we can actually test the route and see how everything works before we just jump in to create the middleware for the token verification and authorization and permissions of all of that. I want to be sure that our route are working. I want you to see how the route work. Starting from the login, the sign up, the upload post, we have to make sure all the routes are working. So that's why I am starting my terminal. I'm running the npm start and I'm going straight to Postman here. So in Postman here, I'm going to create a new collection of folders, and I'm going to call it share articles, because it's more like an articles we're sharing. You upload articles with pictures, you upload articles with titles. So the name of this folder is going to be share articles on Postman. So remember, you know what Postman is? It's actually an IDE that is used to test the backend endpoint made with either Node.js or any other framework. So actually, we're going to use this Postman now to test all our endpoints that we want to work with before we add the token authorization and permissions to it. So the first route we're going to work on is the login route. As you know, because you have to log in before you have access to other routes, you have to make sure you're logged in and you're authenticated. If you do not log in, then you cannot access other routes. So I'm going to show you how to check if a user is logged in before he can do any other thing on the platform. So for login route, we're just going to say localhost. Then we're going to localhost, the port is 9000. So as the localhost 9000 API, then authentication, then login. Okay, so for instance, let's try to log in a user now, and Let's see if it works. Right, so now I want to log in this user with the email, and then if you check here, we're not using any of these. We're using the we're using the raw, and the raw is of JSON format because we're not uploading any images in this raw. So if we are not uploading any images, we're just going to use the raw body, and then we're going to get the email, raw.body.email, and other necessary parameters here. So now this is the body here, and if you check right, we are using the JSON, right? Okay. So for instance, let's see if we actually give it a password called password, then we just click send. It's going to tell us the message here, user does not exist, register user. So that's what it's telling us, because that user currently does not exist in a database, and we have to sign up the user before we actually log in. So if you check this message here, we're saying if there is no user found, you're going to return that message. So now the sign up route is what we're going to use to sign up a user before we actually log in. And if you check the sign up, we have middleware for upload images and other things. So because of this middleware, let me just create a request here, and let me call it the sign up. Yeah, it's going to be the sign up. So remember, we're trying to test a route before we work with the token verification, authentication, authorization, and all of that. Before we authorize the user for certain features, we need to test this endpoint. That's what I'm doing now. So I've pasted it here, and then you see a sign up. So I'm going to copy the sign up endpoint and then paste it here. So there's going to be a post request, and because we are uploading images, we have to use a form data, because see the endpoint here, upload image, that's middleware, a middleware that actually handles image upload. So because of that, we have to use the form data. We cannot use the default raw body that we use for login because of this image middleware. First of all, we need a password, and we need other things for this endpoint. We did this in the previous video. I showed you how to achieve all of this. So if you did not watch the previous video, you have to go back and watch it to understand what we're doing. So we have the profile picture, if there's a request, and if there is no file in it, if the file is null, it will return a null, or if the file is not null, it will return a file with a file name. I showed you how to do this in the previous video. So now that's the password being hashed there. So we need the email. So let's start off with that, and let's go. So for this sign up endpoint, we need a form data, and we need an email here. First of all, we're going to use the email, and if we go back to the IDE, we also need a password. It is the password, and then we also need name. So this is name. So we need those necessary 3 fields: email, password, and name. So coming down here, we also need what can. Okay, I think we need some other things like images, but the email we're going to use to sign up is the j18186@email.com, and then we're going to use the password, and the name would be Joseph. Okay, so you want to sign up. It actually works. So we have a new user with the email j18186@gmail.com, and these are the user details for the users. So now with this user created using the sign up login, we can now go back to log in the user. So okay, so now I see we logged in the user, and you can see the user down here. So, okay, so that means now the login endpoint is working, and also the sign up endpoint is working. So we also need to verify that to set up the upload post endpoint to be sure that we can upload a post before we proceed. So the upload post, yeah, that's it. So it's going to be like a post request. So to upload a post, let's go to the post controller and then copy this endpoint here to upload a post. So we definitely need this endpoint to upload a post. I just want to be sure all the endpoints are working before we go deeper to start coding, because if we do not check all of these, then we could encounter errors without knowing. So we have to be sure it's working before we go deeper to coding with authentication and authorization of the user. So now that's the endpoint you want to test, the upload post endpoint, and I am copying that out. So that's the upload post there. Okay. So now that's cool. So the upload post is going to be a form data because we're uploading images. We can use a raw body JSON. So to upload a post, we need certain fields like the title, we need the description. If you check down here, we did this in the previous video. Title, need description, and all of that. So first of all, I'm going to use the form data because we are uploading images. And I'm going to put here the title. And then I'm going to put here a description. And then I'm going to put here, okay, we don't need that. I'm going to put here categories, we need the categories. So we need the categories. So I'm going to put the categories, okay. So what else do we need? I think to upload a post, we need an image. So we need an image. So in order to upload an image, we have to go up to the middleware that we used in the route. That's the middleware. We're gonna get this key value here, images, and then we're gonna paste it in here. So images is gonna be an array of files. We're gonna use 3, 4, 5 files. You get it. So I'm gonna attach files to this, and then the desktop here, and then you just choose multiple files that we want to upload. Okay, 3 files have been selected, and then let's try upload. Okay, I think it's not uploading, and that's because we have to use a post request since we are sending data to the database. And also it's giving us an error here again because let's see, if you come here, let's see, why is it giving us an error? If you come, okay, we have to use this post. I think our route was wrong. We use the auth. Let's copy this post because the post, we're dealing with post here, and then we're gonna paste it in here. Okay, now so the route is correct. Now we used the wrong route there previously, and I explained all of this in the previous video, and I just sent a request, but it's taking time. It's telling me, okay, it worked, but it's telling me there's an error. Title part is required and description. Yeah, that's because most fields are compulsory. Like the title, we left it blank. It's not supposed to be blank. So we're gonna write a title here. Now to prevent errors, we're gonna write a description, and then we're as well gonna write categories. Let's give it food. Yeah, food category. So if you run the endpoint, we check the post schema we have required. In the schema of the post, yeah, make sure they're all required. So we did this in the previous video. I showed you how to do it and how it worked. So now if I run the post, it should work now, and you can see that we have everything uploaded to the database, and it returns to us a response. Then it's successfully uploaded with the category food, the ID, and a lot of other data containing the pictures and all of that. So now the upload post endpoint is working, and you can see that we have the major route working. So one thing I want us to do now is to proceed further into the authorization and authentication of the user. So we have to proceed here so that we can ensure that the user is actually logged in before you can upload posts, or you have to be an admin before you can upload posts. How do you achieve that? So I'm going to show you how to achieve that now. It's going to be a step-by-step tutorial. So you're going to watch and you're going to like it. So the upload post route works and everything seems to be fine, yeah. But on the login user, so any logged in user and admin can upload posts. So this is what we need to do. We have to make sure that it's only the logged in user, and we have to make sure that you're either an admin before you can upload a post. And I'm going to show you how to achieve that using our tokens and all of what we did. So hope you're understanding, and that's just okay. So as we get the point, let's go straight to our verified token class here. In this class, we let's close all tabs and start afresh with just the class verified tokens. Okay, so in this class here, as you can see, we go up, 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 up. Yeah. Okay, so now I want to talk about the login controller, the login endpoint here. That's why I am in this controller. So in this login endpoint, you can see that we generated a token. This is where we generated our token. So each time we use a login, you have a new token. And this token contains some kind of detail, some kind of information, like the user ID that is logged in. Or you can add any other information you want to store in the token payload. So let me show you what I mean. So we're going to use a token to know is user admin. So we can use this token, we can store any information, we can store any little data that we want to store, we can store it inside the payload of the JWT token. For example, now all we have is the ID of the user, but I want to add some extra information to this payload. So in order to add some extra information to this payload, I'm just going to create some kind of field stubs in the payload object here. So for now, we only have the ID, which is the ID of the user, but I want to create something called the role. So the role could be either a user or an admin. We can just assign any kind of role to the user. So I'm going to say, could it be an admin or could it be a user, anyone? Okay, so we've given the JWT token two data to hold, which is the ID of the user and the role of the user. So you could add more, you could add 10, you can add as many as you want to. So when the user logs in, the access token gets this information when the user is logged in. So now we have the row here, but I don't like this. I want to make it more arranged. So I'm going to create a file of some kind of stuff, and I'm going to call it row.js. I'm going to call it the row.js. So the row.js is going to export and contain all the rows which a user can have, all the row a user is capable of having. That's what is going to be in this row.js class. I'm going to say module.export, and you're going to export all the roles the user can have, the admin, the user, you can call it the administrator, the accountant, you call it anything you want to call any role. You're going to put all your roles. Yeah, you just need to try and make all your project arranged. So now the module.export is going to export this class here, is going to export this file, is going to export all the roles the user is capable of having. So it could be like an admin, or it could be a user. Okay, so you see that a user, the two roles we're going to make use of is the admin role and the user role. So the admin role and these are all exported, so we can now import it. We can now import it and use it in the API controller. So instead of hard coding the user here, we just import that class and call on any role that we want to assign the user to. So we have to import it, the class first of all, the class that contains all the roles a user is capable of having. That is this class that we just created. I'm going to say require. You're going to require utils and then role. Okay, so we imported this class, the class that contains all the role a user can have. So with the head of this class, now we can assign roles to any user that is logged in. So now going down to the login route, and while we are generating the access token, we're going to pass in the ID of the user, and as well we're going to pass in the role of the user. So we're going to say role dot admin. Okay, so now the token contains the data in its payload, which is the ID and the role of the user. Let's console log this out to be sure that we are getting actually a role. So you see how it looks like in the console when we call on the role dot user or role dot admin. So what we're doing now is passing data to the token. So with this data, we can get data from a token. So your token can hold any manner of data, like the ID, the role, whatever you want to give your token to hold, is going to hold it. So we just gave it the role now to hold. So that is it now. So our token is becoming much more complex at this point, but I guess you understand what I'm doing. Okay, so I just console log the role of the user so you can see the output of that. So this login route, when triggered, generates a token, and the token contains the ID and as well contains the role of the user. Alright, so we're on the right track here. Okay, so these are two things: the token contains the role and the ID. So you go to Postman and we now say, okay, let's log in a user now. So I'm just gonna log in this user by clicking on the login route on Postman, and it actually logs in the user and generates a token. But if you come here to the console, you're gonna see this is the role of the user. The user is not an admin, the user is just a normal user. So you see that is the role of the user, so it's working. So now we assign the user a role, which is just the user. Okay. So each time the user logs in, it's going to be assigned a role. Okay, so I hope you're understanding there. And we can use that now to authorize the user to take on any action and do whatever it wants to do on the platform. Okay, so again, back here we're creating functions that will handle authentication and authorization. So first of all, we have to verify the token to be sure the user is logged in. So if the user is logged in, this is the function that's going to verify the token. So we're going to make use of this access token. We're going to verify the token here to be sure it's going to be the user is logged in. So remember, this is the access token. It was generated during login, and then we passed in the ID and the role of the user. So we use the jwt.sign, passed in the ID, and we passed in the role of the user. So now we want to be sure that when the user is making a request, like he wants to get all posts, we want to be sure that the user is logged in. So first of all, we have to verify the token. To be sure of that, you have to verify the token. This is how we know if a user is logged in. So this is going to be like an arrow function here, and then we're going to pass in the request, the response we're going to give out, and we're going to also use like a next. The next is what we use in the middle, where like when everything is done, move to the next action. So now that's the next there. So okay, this is what the way we're creating here. So now the request, you're gonna have some headers you get. So we need to get the headers from the API request. So whenever a user make a request to the back end, it's gonna send some headers. This headers is gonna contain the token. So it's this headers that we're gonna get the token and also verify that the user is logged in. So the request is more like incoming request. That's what the REQ means, and the RES is like the response we want to give out, and then we have the next, which is the next action to be performed after everything is successful. Yes, if you know, it's probably a. So next is like if everything is successful, do next action. Okay, so now we have to do get the headers from the incoming request. So that's the first thing to do. Through the headers we're going to get the token. So to get the headers, it's very simple. I will just have to create a variable here, just call it token, or yeah, let's just call it token or some kind of a thing. I'm going to call it token, and then I'm going to say request dot headers. I'm going to say request dot headers dot authorization here. So this is going to give us the token that we need to work with, the token that we need to actually validate if the user is logged in. Okay, so we have the token now from the request, and then let's get the token. Alright, so that is it. Now we have the token now from the request. So I'm going to check if there's a token. That's if token, then do something else. Going to do something else. If there is no token, we're going to send a response to the user, telling the user there is no token and logged in. So we're going to say if there is token, do something else, do something else. So right. First of all, let's assume there is no token, or the user is not signed up, or he sent a request without putting headers. So we're going to tell the user, you're going to send a response here, you're going to return a response here. I tell the user status dot this is status for one, then I'm going to say in JSON here, I'm going to say what message should be passed. We're going to say could not find token, or you are not logged in, or you're not authenticated, please sign up, or something like that to the user. Please register, okay, or login. So we're going to tell that this register or login, somewhere of that. So now that is if there is no token in the request made on the headers. Then okay, okay, so now we have a token. Is assuming we have the token, we have to verify the token. So there are the way to verify this token is like we're going to use the JWT JSON Web Tokens. There's a function called verify. All you have to do is passing the token, passing the secret key, and then it does the action. So we check in a package.json, we have the JSON Web Tokens here. This is what we're going to use to verify tokens, and also do a lot of things with tokens. So we have to import it. Remember to use a new library or external libraries. We have to import them in the file that we want to use them. So JWT is going to require JSON Web Tokens here. Is what we're going to import. Yeah. So with this now we can verify our tokens to be sure, okay, the token that we're using is valid, it's not an invalid token. So that's what we're trying to do here. And now, in order to verify the tokens, we're going to say jwt.verify, JWT that we just imported. So jwt.verify. We're going to pass in the tokens, we're going to pass in the secret key. I'll show you where the secret key is. It's in a .env file. So we're going to pass in the token. I'm going to pass in the secret key. Let me just write it up here, the parameters needed in this verify function. The tokens, the secret key. We also need the callback function here. Alright, so three things needed there. Because if the user is verified, callback function is going to take most actions. If there's an error in one way or the other, it's the callback function that takes the presumed error. So that this is the secret key in a .env file. I don't know what you called yours, but my secret key is, this is it in my .env file. So I'm going to import the .env because we want to use the secret key in there. So we're going to say .env, and we're going to import it and then do the config and what we have to do. So .env require, I'm going to pass in the .env here, okay. Alright, so now we have .env, we have to do .env.config. It will help us configure the env file. Alright. Then with that being done, we can now get the secret key from the process.env.secret key, which obviously we have here. So that was not hard. That means the secret key points down to this position here. So now we have the secret key. We're just going to put it inside here, secret key, and then that's it. So now we have the callback function, and the callback function is this. So error, and we're gonna have a data. So that is, if there's an error, then we're gonna have also a data here. So the data here is gonna be the payload that we gave to the token during the login. So now with this, we verify the tokens. Simply, we just verify by doing this. I think we're way forward now. So if there's an error, let me just, for instance, while verifying the token, we're going to send a response to the user. The token is invalid, or there's something wrong with your token. Please check it out, or it's still valid token in the headers. So I'm going to say there is an error. I'm going to say there is an error. What should we use here? Token expired. Yeah, your token can expire, becomes invalid, or you're putting a wrong token. So we're going to say token expired or wrong tokens here. Okay. So that's it. That's if there's an error, but if there's no error, you can now proceed to send a response telling the user, okay, we verified the token. The user will now know that, okay, he can take an action. So we're going to say the response, the data request the data is equal to data. Okay, so that's it down. So I'm just write a comment here for you to understand what I just did. So we're creating a request data here. We're just creating this. You can call it request.payload, request.info, request.anything, but you have to assign it to the data that comes from the JSON web token. So request.data is what we're assigning this. So the data here is the ID of the user and the role of the user that be assigned to it in the payload during the login. So now do next. So once the token is verified and we assigned a data to the request after getting the data from the token which we gave to it during the sign up or login, you saw the data we gave to it, the ID and the role. So we assign the data here to the request body, to the request body here, and then when we are done, we now say next. So now perform the next action that is meant to be performed. There's a callback function in the middle here. Okay. So now the token is verified, and then we've handled all the error situations and the error state. So what we need to do next is, this is just for authentication to be sure the user is logged in or the user have signed up on the platform. So we have to create another function that will handle to check if the user is an admin or if the user is just a normal user. There are certain actions that only the admin can perform. In that case, you want to check if the user is an admin. So we're going to say we're going to create a function down here, and we're going to say constant verify token with authorization. Okay, so now this function, what it does is that it's going to handle authorization to check if you're an admin before you can perform certain things. So in that case, I'm going to be sure you're an admin. So still going to take in the three normal parameters here that requires the response at the next callback function. So in that case, that is it. So we're going to, first of all, before you check if a user is an admin, you have to be sure, okay, that user is logged in as well. So you cannot just jump in to check if he's an admin. You have to be sure the user is logged in before you check if he's an admin. So we're going to use the previous functions to also check if the user is logged in before we proceed to check if he's an admin. So use the admin tokens, use the tokens for authorization rule check. Don't write a comment here so that we can understand what I'm trying to do. Okay. So now we need a request here, just like this. I'm just gonna copy this here, so you know, all gonna be the same since the middleware. I'm gonna copy it and I'm gonna paste it in here. Okay. So now we're still gonna use the previous function first of all. Before you verify if the user is an admin, you have to verify the user is signed up and logged in as well. So we're gonna use this verify token here to be sure that the user is logged in. Just check the authentication state of the user. So I'm gonna use it here. So verify tokens, that is it. Then we're gonna stick in the pass in the request, we're gonna pass in the response. And the next one is a callback function here that we need to be executed. The logic in the function is done correctly. So now that is it. So you're gonna do everything inside here now, because now apart from, first of all, this will handle authentication verification. It does this, we did all of it here, and it will send to us a data when it is done. It will send to us a data here. So in here we're gonna make use of that data that we sent from the previous middleware. So we're gonna say the request.data, which is this data here that contains the ID and as well contains the role of the user. So that's the data that we passed during signing. So the data is going to be like an object of ID and role of a user. So all I want here is the role. So if the request.data role is equal to the admin, yeah. If it is equal to the admin, then you can proceed, or else do not proceed. So in that case, we're going to go to the roles. Remember, we created a file, and this file here handles all the roles which we imported here. I'm just going to copy this import statement, so I'm going to type it again, and I'm going to make use of it up here. So we check here. So now we can get the roles of all the roles that the user can be assigned to. So in this case, we want to check if the request.data role is equal to the role of the admin or the role of the user. So for now, I'm just going to use admin. So if the request.data role is equal to that of admin, then we're going to do some check here. So if it's equal to the admin, right, we're going to perform the next thing on that middleware. Remember to import this. Remember, it's very important. We imported this class here, the role class that we created previously. I showed you how we created this. Just contain the roles user can be assigned to. So we just import it here and then check if the role.data the request.data role is equal to the admin. If the role is equal to the admin from the headers, then we can do next, else only admin can do that. So that is just a simple authorization check. So that will help us check if the user is an admin or just a normal user. Okay, so now what is left is to export. You have to export this function in order to use it in other files. So we have to say module.export. It's going to be equal to object here that contains the two functions, which is the verify token and the verified token with authorization. Verify tokens and then verify tokens with authorization. Okay, so that is it. Now we've exported two functions. So with this now we can import it in other files and make use of it. This is just a simple file that will handle all the token check, authorization, and authentication of the user. So now I'm going to show you how to make use of this function as a middleware in a route, so that when you trigger a route, it calls on this function and does the check before it executes the logic within the route. So that'll be what we're going to move on to now. Okay, so now this is a post controller, and then we're going to make use of these functions we just created to verify the user before he either makes a post or before he uploads a post or before he gets all the posts. You have to make sure he's either authorized or he's either authenticated. So we're going to make use of the previous functions we just created and you make use of it. But first of all, it's going to be as a middleware to all this route. After the get all posts, let's just be sure everything is working. Let me just trigger this. And I'm going to trigger this as well. Okay, the endpoint is set. Let's just trigger this and be sure it's working first of all before we. Okay, it's working well. I showed you how we achieved this in my previous videos, so if you haven't watched it, you need to go back and watch it. Okay, so food, you have the categories, and if you want to query food, you see it works. So in that case, the endpoint is working. We can get all posts, and you can get either by category or you can get either by the latest post. I showed you how we did this in the previous videos. So okay, this food is not working. That's because we wrote the wrong route up there. Let me correct it. Category is gonna be equal to food. Okay, that's it. Okay, so I just corrected that. We just put in the question mark and equal to. So now it works, I guess. Yep. Okay. So you can also query by the latest post, and if you check down here, let me just put and I'm just trying to check a route. I just want to show you what we did in the previous video, so that I just copy this. You know where we are heading. So now anybody in that case, even you don't need to be signed up. So far as you can access this route, you can get all the posts. But what we want to do is restrict you so that you have to be signed up in order to get a post. So right now everybody has a general access. It's an open route to anybody, but I want to make sure that apart from being an open route, I want to make sure that you are either logged in or sign up, or you are an admin before you can access the route. Okay, so let's proceed with that, and then let me show you how to authenticate and authorize the users using these functions we created here. Okay, so this is the upload post route, and in order to upload a post, currently now anybody can upload a post, anybody can upload a post, anybody can get a post, but we want to add some logic to be sure that the user is either an admin or that. So let's go to the user model here. I'm going to make some changes here, and then in here you're going to write, is the user an admin? We're going to add more of like a field to the user model. So I'm adding an is admin. This is admin will help us check or will store in the database if the user is an admin or not. So is an admin is going to be of type bool. It's a user schema down here. It's a user schema. So remember, a user schema more of like tells us how the user model is going to look like. So I'm adding a new property here called the isAdmin, which will help us check if the user is an admin, or store it in the database if the user is an admin or if he is not. So if the user is an admin, it's going to be true, or else it's going to be false. So it's of type bool and it's required here. This will help us check to if the user is an admin. I want to show you how to the best ways to do this. So if the user is an admin, it's going to be required false, and the default value actually is going to be false, because when a user signs up using the login route, automatically not all users will be an admin. By default, it's going to be false. So we are the ones that would give a user authorization as an admin. We are going to, from the database, we're going to, I'll show you how I do that. But for now, by default is false. If you are signing up or logging in, by default, you're going to be a normal user. You're not going to be an admin. So let's adjust it now. So in that case, let's go back to this route. But okay, let me see. I want to save my work to be sure the changes I just made. Let me go down to be sure the changes I just made have been executed. Okay, so I guess the changes have been saved. I'm gonna save all my work and I'm going to start the terminal again. So in this terminal, let me just run the code. The npm start here. So in that case, you see node1 is running, and that's it. Okay, so we'll have to go test in my database now. Let me just delete everything I have in here to be sure that the database is empty. I'm going to delete it. So deleting the table, f table, I'm going to delete it. Okay, so the table has been deleted. It's totally empty now, and I'm going to go to my postman. I'm going to log in a new. I want to show you something here. Okay, I'm going to sign up a new user. Alright, so if you check in here, you're going to see the isAdmin here. IsAdmin here is false, meaning that the user is not an admin. So in that case, the user would be restricted to some of features on the platform. And if you go to the database, I'm going to refresh it. You're going to see in the database that in the database, you're going to see isAdmin here is false. So that's to tell you that the user that we just created is not an admin, you know. So this is working nice and it's working fine. So if you want the user to become an admin, we can easily change it to true. We can change it to true there in the database. And if you log in the user now, let's log in the user that we just created. You're going to see the isAdmin now is still false. But let's say we want to assign the user to become an admin. So let me see. All I have to do is change this to true from the database. So if I change it to true from the database, then the user becomes an admin. So I just need to make this true. So we can assign admin from the database. We can assign a user and admin from the database. So that's what I'm doing here. I've made it true here. And in that case, let's just change this. Let me just do this. It's true. I want to make this user an admin. I want to make this user an admin. So all I do is then update. Okay, the button is down here, not up there. So I'm going to update the user now. The user becomes an admin. Okay, and that's it. And I'm just going to refresh the page now. And if I refresh the page, this is a database. Remember, this is the MongoDB database. So, and I just send the request. So now I logged in the user on Postman. You're going to see isAdmin is true. So this user is an admin. So this user now have certain permissions, certain things on the platform he can do that other users cannot do. So isAdmin here is true. Alright. All we have to do now is ensure that we put headers. So these headers up here, in the login route, we're going to make use of this token. Each time a user logs in, a token is generated. So in the verified token here, we're going to make use of the headers. So you see the authorization, the tokens, all of that. We need the headers from each request. So every request you make to the back end is going to be made with a header or with a header attached to it. So we're going to make use of these headers to retrieve the token and check if the user is an admin or if the user is a user. Remember, when you log in, the token has an ID here assigned to it in the login route. So we're going to use the ID to fetch the user from the database. We're going to check that field. If the user is an admin, we're going to check it. Yeah, so that's what we want to do now. And this data you see here contains the ID of the user. Every token has the ID of the user. Who owns that token? It has an ID in it. So in that case, instead of checking the role here, we're going to check the ID of the user. So we're going to use the ID now to fetch the user from the database and check if the user is an admin or if the user is not an admin. So remember, that's the ID during login. This is where we created the token during login. That's the ID there. And then we don't need this any longer. All we just need is the ID. I think I'm going to get rid of all of this and write this logic down here again. All we just need is this ID. We don't need all of that. Let me get rid of all of this. You can get it out. So all we need to do is check the request.data.id. So this will get us the ID of the user. So we're gonna say the ID is equal to request.data.id. So now we can use this ID to get the user from the database. But for now, I think we should just, let's see. I think we should just console log this. So first of all, let me write a comment so that you understand. So we are going to use the ID to find the user in the database. Okay. So remember this user now, we're going to import it here. We need to make use of the user schema, just like we did in other places where we want to make use of the user schema and communicate with the database. So since we are communicating with the database, we need to import the user schema so that we're going to make use of it. So I'm going to copy the user schema from here. And in the user schema, I'm going to paste it here. So now we're going to make use of the user schema to fetch the user from the database. So to fetch the user from the database, all I have to do is use the ID. So using an ID of a user, with an ID of a user, we can actually get that particular user out of the database by using the find by ID. I'm going to show you how we're going to fetch that out. But first of all, we import the user schema because we're making use of it to find the user in the database. So now, all I'll do for now is just console log. First of all, let me get the user out. So to do that, we're going to say user.find by ID. This user up here. So the user up here, we're going to say user.with user.find by ID. find by ID. See it up there. Is it? Okay. So then it's a user.find by ID, and in that case, we're just passing the ID of the user. So that's it. So we're going to do console.log, and then we're going to log this so we can see whether we got it, or we can see whether we retrieved it successfully, or if we didn't retrieve it successfully. But if we did retrieve it successfully, it's going to show in the log here. So that's it. Okay. So now we fetched out the user from the database. Now later I'm gonna use the user to check if the user is an admin or if the user is not. Remember, we stored in the database each time a user logs in that the user is not or signs up. We stored the admin field is false. We're gonna check that field to know if the user is an admin or not. So this is better than the previous logic we did. Okay. So we are close by to achieving this. So in the post controller here, if you check in here, we have one middleware which helps us to upload an image. But now we're going to use two middlewares, one to handle authorization of the tokens and one to upload image. So we're going to use that in an array. We're going to put an array symbol, an array of middlewares. So that's it. So this is now an array of middlewares. So now you know how to use more than one middleware on your route. So in that case, I'm going to go to these verified tokens here, and I want to call this function in here. So to do that, I have to import this verified token.js file. I have to import it. So I'll go up. Let's go up to do that. I have to go up and import it down up here for use. So I'm going to say constant token is going to be equal to the require, and then go to the directory I want to use the file. Okay, so now you have to import the token class up here, the verified token class, because without importing it, there's no how we would use it. So it's going to require, then we're going to import the directory. We're going to get the class from the directory, so the utils.verifiedToken.js, which is down here. Okay, so now the token here, this is the class here. So we exported it, right? Yeah, we did export it. So let me just write here for you to know that the verified token handles only authentication checks, while the verified token with authorization handles both the authentication and the authorization checks. So these are two different functions that do different things. So it handles only, not really, it handles both the authentication and the authorization check. So there are two different things. So when you want to handle only authentication check, you use the verified token. And when you want to handle both authentication and authorization check, you use the verified token with authorization. So now I'm going to say token here, the token class that we just imported, token dot. So I'm going to use verified token with authorization, because you have to be an admin to either upload this. So now that way we have used a middleware route. Okay, so now we're on the right track, and I'm going to go to a terminal, and in here I'm just going to run the npm start. Okay. Okay, there's a little error here, and I'm trying to figure out why I'm having that error. So I've just read it here and I use an await keyword. I use an await keyword without using the async in the function. I'm going to go back there and fix it up, make sure this function is asynchronous because we are using await here. So the function would have to be asynchronous as well. So that's it. So the function will have to be asynchronous. So that way I think it works now, and the post controller we can now actually check with the middleware. Alright, so we're on the right track here at this point. So now let's go to the post controller. Let's just upload a post. And you see it tell us you are not authenticated. Please register or log in. You see? So now you cannot upload a post if you are not authenticated because of that route, because of that middleware we just created now. So we see it works perfectly, and that's great. But one thing I want to do now is change this from a string to a JSON object. Okay. Most times, most API return JSON, they don't return a bare string. So I'm gonna change this to a JSON object here, and I'm gonna put a message, and then in this message all I'll have to say here is you are not authenticated. Because there is no token, you are not authenticated. Please sign in or sign up. Okay. Or please register. Okay, so that's please register or login. So that works well, and the status is gonna be error or something like that. So that is cool now. And if I go back to my postman and I trigger the route without signing up or without authentication, it's gonna return to me something here. Okay, so let's go check it out. So it does not return a string again. Instead, now it returns a JSON object. And this JSON object now is telling us you are not authenticated. Please register or login. So you see, so now the middleware is working. The verified token middleware that we just used is working. And now if you go to get all posts, right now you can get all posts. So let's add the middleware to the get all post route so that you have to be logged in before you get a post. You understand what I mean? So I'm gonna add a middleware so that you have to be logged in. You have to be authenticated to see all posts or to see articles. Alright, so that way we're going to use the token dot. We're going to use the token dot verify token. There's only one middleware here in this route. Okay. The verify token. Alright. So once we do that, now we can now go back and try to trigger the route again. So we trigger the route, it will tell us you are not authenticated, please register or login. So now it works well too. So all the routes now are actually have some validation, authorization, authentication checks in it. So we're on the right track again, and upload post and get all posts now have all those checks in it. So now what is left to do is how do we ensure that the user is authenticated? So now you have to log in. To do that, you have to first of all log in to view all posts. You log in, then we're gonna not authenticated, right? You're seeing they're telling us we're not authenticated is what we're getting. So we have to log in. After logging in, let me just show you, right? Let me write something here for you to understand. So the thing is that so what we have to do is you see it's telling us token expired or wrong token because we went to the bearer token here. If we do not put any token, if we remove the token, it's telling us you are not authenticated. But if we copy the token, let's just log in now, and then if we copy the token, right, and then we copy it and then we paste it, we go to the bearer. This is how we're gonna put the token bearer as the header there, and put it in here. If we put the token here and we click send, it tells us token expired or wrong token here. So that's to tell that the token we used is actually not correct. So to solve that issue, there's some checks we have to do. We have to check if the token is actually valid before we proceed. Now to check if the token is valid, we have to do some certain kind of things, you know. If the token format is wrong, so let's just use an object here, just an object instead. So it's gonna tell us, I don't like using strings, I like using just an object here, message, and it will tell us your token, or should I say invalid tokens used. So now how do we ensure that the token is valid? That's what I want to show you, so that you know success is going to be false. Okay. Now to ensure that the token is valid, there's some certain things we need to do. I will show you soon. Just give me some minute. Let me fix this stuff. Ensure that token is valid. There are certain things we need to do. Let me fix it here. Because now if we run this now, it's going to, let's go log in again. Let's just copy the token as well. Let's just copy the token, and then after login, we copy the token. We use the token as the header. So we're gonna put it as the header here, so that the REST API endpoints can know this user is actually a valid user. So when I put the token in there, it's telling me invalid token used, success false. So now that is telling us that this token is invalid. You get? So let's just see why the token is invalid. We're going to just attach the token to the response. So I'm going to just attach the token to the response here, and as input token. Okay. All right. So if we trigger the route again, if we trigger this route again, it's going to tell us. Yeah. See the token there. We had to put this token in here, but do you see what it's showing to us? It's showing to us a bearer attached to it. You get the point. So we don't need a bearer. You know that comes by default with Postman. You see. So we did not put the bearer, but when the token comes with a bearer, so we need to find a way to get rid of that bearer. You know, we don't need that. That's what is causing the error. You see, it's a bearer attached to it, which we do not need. So we need to remove this bearer in order to solve that problem. So in here, we're going to write some checks here. I'm going to change this from a constant to just, this is a var instead. Okay, so we're going to change that token. We're going to edit it right now. So it cannot be a constant any longer. So we're going to say tokens. So the token here is going to be equal to token dot replace. We're going to replace that bearer keyword we saw there, because we do not need the bearer. The bearer was attached there by the Postman by default, but we're going to get rid of it because we're not going to use it to check if the token is verified or valid, or, you know, we're not going to use that bearer. So I want to get rid of the bearer, and that is bearer. We don't need that. We're going to replace it with just an empty string. Okay. So so I think we're on the right track now, and in that case we just replace the bearer. So I think this should work now. Token dot replace bearer. Okay, so in that case we run the token, and then you see it works now. It gets all the posts because the user is authenticated. There is a valid token, and it works. So if you send a request now, and as the login route, we're gonna copy the token in here. So we copy the token, and then the bearer token, we're gonna get all posts, we're gonna put it in here, and then by the time we trigger, it's gonna tell us, it actually retrieves the post because we are logged in. We put a valid token, so everything works here. Everything works. So we get the authentic token, we replace it with the bearer, we replace the bearer with an empty string, and then it's no more invalid. Instead, it returns to us the response that we need. Okay, so the same thing here. Let's do the same thing for upload post. Let's try to upload a post with a valid token. I'm gonna copy the token here, and I'm gonna paste it in here, and then I'm gonna click on send. Okay, it's taking too long to actually process the response, and that is because this has to do with the verified token with authorization. This particular route, we're actually checking if the user is an admin. So I think there's something we did not do right there. If you check the console, it actually returns to us the user object. The console, you see, I see the user object here, but it's not bringing out anything here. So I don't know why that is happening, and everything is right. But I have to check the code later on now, because there should be something wrong with the code down here. So in here, you saw all we did was we only console log. Sorry, I did not even proceed. I did not complete my logic here. So I only, after we verify the token, we get the data, we get the ID. I actually got the user from the database, but I did not do some checks here. So now, the user that we get from the database, let's just check if the user is an admin or not. So if the user is an admin, then you can upload a post, or else if the user is not an admin, we're gonna throw it back again to them, telling them, okay, only the admin can do this. So we're gonna say a var, we're gonna create a var keyword here and keyword, and we're gonna say is admin. So if the user is an admin, we're gonna say, let's use this to user result. So user result, I'm gonna say user result dot, I'm gonna say is admin. So we're going to retrieve that from the database to check if that particular user is an admin. So let's get rid of this console log here. So this is an admin. We're going to say if admin, if is admin, then else, if it's not admin, we're going to do something else. Okay, so if the user is an admin, we're going to say next. Okay, so we're going to proceed now. If the user is an admin, we're going to go next. But if the user is not an admin, we're going to return a response telling the user, I'm going to return a response telling the user only the admin can do this. Only admin can upload post. Okay, only admin can upload post here. Then the success message is gonna be, so we're gonna attach a status here, and then That's an error. So that's if the user is not an admin. Alright, so now that should work here perfectly. Let's just save our work and run the terminal and do the npm start again. So the npm start here would be npm start. In that case, only admin. Alright, so I think we are almost done with this course as it is. After this, all we have to do is upload the code to the Heroku. So we're gonna upload it to a server, and then that's just what we're gonna do. So alright, so I think we have to test this endpoint now to be sure it's working now. So I'm going back to my Postman, and in my Postman we see all of that work now. So upload the post. Let's go try that. Alright, so it works. See, the post was successfully uploaded. That's because the user currently is an admin, right? So let's delete everything from the database, or let's change this to, let's edit that user and change it. Is admin, we're gonna make it false here, so that we're gonna make it false. Alright, so false here in the case, we're going to update it. So in this case now we change the user from an admin to a non-admin. So the user currently now is no more an admin. So in that case, he cannot upload posts. So we're going to use the Postman, and we're going to check, okay, and the user upload posts. You see, it's going to tell us no, it's not an admin. So in that case now, we're going to click a send here. So let's try upload a post, and it's going to tell us no, this user is not an admin. So in that case, there's something wrong. It's taking too long. I think there's some kind of mistake in our code logic somewhere, so we have to check that out immediately now. You have to check that out immediately. So I've seen the mistake here is that let's check. Is that the response is not defined? I think so. So even if we run it again, okay. So I think the response is not defined in here. If you check, we have to. The response is not defined. Alright, so we have to actually correct that. We have to correct that. So the response here is not defined, and so the response here is not defined, and if you check here, all I want to do is correct it. So to correct it, we have to clean this out, because yeah, that is correct now, because that should work. We actually went for the long spelling, which obviously we're not using. So okay, so now if we try this, and see, it's telling us only admin can upload posts here. That's because the user is not an admin. So I think authorization and authentication works very well. This is all we have to do for the endpoint. So we have to now connect this endpoint to our Flutter mobile app and be sure that we can consume this REST API with a mobile app, which will be a wonderful session. Mobile app API consumption. It's going to be wonderful. Stay tuned.